Carl. Carl. That kills people, Carl.
People.
Oh no, it's Carl with a K.
Oh.
Meet Carl.
Meet Carl.
Before we start.
All right, so
Okay, I'm prepared.
vlog episode number 2. I'm Daniel Hardwick, AKL Security Solutions. This is Josh. He is our customer service rep. He's our customer service rep. I'm vice president. This is the beginning of our vlog part 2. Second episode. We still don't have a name for it, so if you can help us come up with a name, that would be great. Actually, no, we decided on a name, didn't we?
Well, I came up with one. You're like,
Yeah, you literally just said the word shop talk, and I was like walking past you. So let's call it shop talk.
Shop talk. All right.
Okay. So anyway, today what we're going to be doing, today's episode, we're going to be going over and responding to the History of Von Duprin. They make exit devices, they make panic hardware, and they were kind of the originators of the exit device, of the panic device on doors. And that happened all because of a gentleman that very nearly died in a fire. And that's what sparked his drive to make the panic device. So what we're going to do is watch the video, and we'll go over that, and we'll kind of pause and go over it, and then we're going to also release what we're going to be doing next week. And so we'll be discussing that after the video. So let's dive into it.
Meet Carl. Carl was born in 1870 in Indianapolis. When he was 17 years old, he landed a job as a salesman at a hardware store. This hardware store, the Vonnegut Hardware Company, located on Washington Street in downtown Indianapolis. By the time he was 27, Carl had become the sales manager for the builder's hardware department. The time that we become particularly interested in is December of his 33rd year, 1903. Carl had been in Chicago on business during the last week of December, and on Wednesday, the day before New Year's Eve, was trying to get a train ticket back to Indianapolis. Unfortunately, there weren't any train tickets available. Being stuck in Chicago for another day, he decided to make the most of it and try to see a show. The show he would try to see was a new play in one of the newest and most talked about theaters on Earth. This theater, the Iroquois Theater. To Chicago, the theater was more than just a venue. It was a plan to unseat New York City as the center of the theater universe. The architecture was dramatic, and the beauty and opulence of the interior was widely praised. It had global attention. Particularly unusual and dazzling was the entrance hall, where all patrons passed through to go from the lobby to their seats. Many staircases in different directions took people from the first floor to the second floor and up to the third floor at the top of this drawing, in an open decorative room that allowed theater goers to, quote, see and be seen, regardless of how much they paid for their ticket, unquote. And at this time in Chicago, this was the place to be seen. The theater was built very quickly, with most of the construction.
So that right there, the construction, it was finished, it was built very quickly. That tells me right there that there's a lot wrong. There's already a lot wrong. When things are rushed, and even we run into this, when jobs are rushed, everything gets overlooked. And so when we come in and like the general contractor or the site supervisor or something like that is in a rush and he's putting crazy deadlines on everything, that's when everything goes wrong. And
even building large buildings just recently with the COVID when it first started.
Yeah.
They built those, what was it, hospitals in China. 3 of them collapsed.
Oh, I didn't even hear about that.
Oh yeah. There was
They
a
built
bunch of
3.
people
So they
lost.
built 3 hospitals in China, and
They had them up in like 2.5 weeks.
So they
had
built
like-
them, and 3 of them collapsed.
Yeah.
How many did they build?
I think they built like 8 new hospitals, maybe.
So 8. 3 out of 8. That's not a good.
Well, just having 1 out of 8 would have been bad.
I know,
too.
yeah. Having 1 hospital collapse would have been bad enough, but yeah. So, but anyway, on this, you know, when anything is rushed, like when any construction project is rushed, yeah, things just get out of hand, and it never ends well.
Haste makes waste.
Exactly.
Construction taking place over the summer of 1903. There was an urgency to begin making money from the investment, and the plan was to open the theater at the end of the summer. And when that didn't happen, to open by October. There must have been a warning about opening by Thanksgiving, because the premiere performance took place on November 23rd. The play that would open the theater was a musical called Mr. Bluebeard. Criticized for minimal plot and storyline, it was highly praised for its dazzling visuals, extravagant costumes, and numerous set pieces. It probably didn't matter what play was playing, as long as it was a memorable experience and an opportunity to say that you saw one of the shows in the new Iroquois Theater. Saying you were going to see a show at the Iroquois in 1903 may have been like saying you were going to the hottest show on Broadway. On the matter of safety, architect Benjamin Marshall said that he, quote, studied every theater disaster in history, unquote, and accounted for them in his designs. Even on this playbill, a claim to its safety, absolutely fireproof.
That's another thing, you know. So the architect of the theater said that he studied every theater disaster and accounted for them in his design. So, like, I don't know. To me, that's just a brag that can't be worn or that can't be backed up.
No.
There's no way that you can, you know, study everything, be an expert, and then you come up with, especially when you're dealing with disasters, you know, natural disasters like a fire, earthquake, anything like that, flooding, stuff like that, anything. That's getting into Mother Nature, and there's no way you can account for that kind of stuff. And then another thing, putting absolutely fireproof, that reminds me of them saying that the Titanic was the unsinkable ship, and we all know what happened to that. So,
Iceberg 1, boat 0.
saying that the theater is absolutely fireproof, you know.
It's begging for it to light on fire.
And another thing, to me, so me being in 2020 here and seeing like an ad for a play, whether it be in one of our local theaters here or in Broadway or anything like that, seeing absolutely fireproof
Yeah.
on the flyer for the thing.
I've never gone
That's
to
just weird.
a movie theater. Like,
But-
don't worry, the building is absolutely fireproof.
Yeah, like you're just. To me, it's like you're compensating for something. But I don't know.
I studied all the
Yeah.
disasters that happened, except for fire. So we're just going to clarify that it's fireproof.
Yeah, I don't know. Like you're just. To me, it's like you're compensating for something. But I don't know.
I studied all the
Yeah.
disasters that happened, except for fire. So we're just going to clarify that it's fireproof.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it looks like you're compensating for something by putting that there.
It's just
I don't know.
foreshadowing.
Maybe that was a common thing. Maybe that was a common practice in 1903. I have no
Everybody's
idea.
smoking inside.
I don't have. Well, that's true. Actually, it says down there at the bottom. It says smoking will not be allowed in the theater, save in the smoking room downstairs, yada yada yada, by the foyer or something like that. So there was a special room you could go smoke in. But anyway, yeah, maybe that was the thing to do, you know, kind of brag about the construction or whatever of the new theater or something. But anyway, let's continue.
I wonder how long it took him to come up with the schematics for actually building the theater?
I don't know. I don't think it says. I wonder. Yeah, I am curious to see. It doesn't actually say from the start date of when he was drafting to construction or to construction end.
I mean, he could have done his job, just the rush construction.
Maybe that's true. We don't know. All right, let's continue.
Is in the upper right corner. Mr. Bluebeard was so popular in the first month that the theater added matinee shows 2 days a week, mostly to attract women and children out shopping during the day. The Wednesday afternoon show on December 30th started at 2 p.m. and continued through the first intermission without issue. The show was beyond sold out, and the theater enacted what was called standing room only, meaning you could see the show if you were willing to stand, typically behind the last row of seats. On this day, standing room only was 4 rows deep.
Okay, so there's the first thing wrong that is going to start adding up to all the Murphy's Law things in this video. So we'll just make a little check mark for everything that adds up to make this an actual disaster. So that's the first we'll keep a tally going, but that's the first little thing. Standing room only, but standing room only was 4 rows deep of people. So
extremely.
What was the capacity? 1,200, and they had 1,800 in there. So yeah, they were packing them in there like sardines anyway. And so that's the first thing that I see wrong. They were just packing it way past capacity.
In a theater with a capacity of 1,200, 1,800 were inside. During the second act, this is what the stage looked like. While the cast was performing, a theater lamp short-circuited, broke, and threw a spark on a nearby drapery, igniting it. The audience barely stirred, perhaps thinking it was a special effect. Stagehands attempted to put the fire out by patting at it with their hands, but they couldn't reach all of it. Another stagehand went to retrieve the equivalent of a fire extinguisher, but there was only one. There should have been several. No one was trained on using it properly, and when it was emptied, the fire remained.
Okay, so there's another 2. There was only one fire extinguisher. Well, what they would consider a fire extinguisher back then.
Bucket of water.
Maybe. Actually, it very well may be. I don't know what was considered a fire extinguisher back in 1903, but
hopefully people.
It's definitely not what they are today. So there's one check, and then the second check in that same sentence was no one was trained on how to use it. So the people that brought in the fire extinguisher during construction was like, here's this thing. See ya.
Puts out fires.
Yeah, it puts out fires.
It probably wasn't a bucket of water.
It works on your network.
It works on your network.
But yeah, so there's 2 checks right in the same sentence. So we're up to 3 right now. Let's go.
As the fire spread to more drapes and set pieces, actors on stage began to panic and wondered why the fire curtain, a large heavy curtain designed to stop the spread of fire into the audience, hadn't been lowered. What they didn't know was that the stagehand responsible for operating that curtain had been hospitalized that day, and the substitute didn't know which rope to pull. At this point, the main actor in the show...
So I was kind of going back and forth here, but there was another thing. The fire curtain, it was supposed to fall, but the guy that was trained on how to work the fire curtain went to the hospital earlier that day, and nobody else knew how to work it. So I guess they tried to, fumble around. So there's another check mark.
A man named Eddie broke character and walked to the front of the stage to tell the audience to remain calm and stay in their seats. A stagehand eventually began to lower the fire curtain, but the curtain got stuck halfway down. They cut the ropes, hoping that the curtain would fall the rest of the way. It fell another foot and would never fall any lower. Eddie told the audience to calmly exit the theater, and witnesses described his heroism to remain on stage to calm the audience, while flaming chunks of scenery were falling to his right and his left. There were no exit signs. There should have been, but there weren't. To get out from the first floor,
Yep.
only
Another
one door
no
was
exit
open,
signs.
here. Everyone had to make their way to one side of
And
the
there's
theater
another one.
and go
Only one
through that
door
one door.
to get out.
There were many other doors, but they were locked, or they had handles like this that required special knowledge to work. These locks were new in the United
More
States,
training than
so
everyone.
theater
Yeah.
goers were not familiar
Yeah,
with
so that handle right there, that is the most ridiculous looking thing I've ever seen. And now I guarantee it was something that came over from Europe. And there's a lot of stuff that's in Europe that, you know, it has the life safety features now, but a lot of it is really decorative too. And so it's a lot more decorative than like what we've got in the US right now. But yeah, there's another thing that someone had to be trained on how to use that nobody got trained on. And, you know, nobody knew how to unlock it. I mean, so far, nobody knows how to use a fire extinguisher. Nobody knows how to use the fire curtain. Nobody knows how to use the actual locks on the doors.
It's just poor planning. Why
Yeah.
would you buy a lock that nobody knows how to use?
Well, I mean, those, I think those are, it says those were new. Yeah, it says they are new in the United States. So they probably came over from Europe, but they wanted, I guarantee you, they wanted to use them on the Iroquois Theater because it was the, you know, the latest and greatest building. So.
And they learned that importing locks from Europe is a bad idea. It's probably the last time they were used.
Oh, these, yeah,
the United
probably.
States, so theater goers were not familiar with them. Only one usher knew how to work them, and that's only because he figured it out on his own. None of the ushers had been trained yet on the doors or on evacuation, and the theater hadn't yet run a fire drill. If you were on the second or third floors, no
There's
doors
another-
were open.
No, there hadn't even been
People
a fire
attempting
drill
to
yet, and
escape
there
were
are
met
how
with
many
ushers who
places-
refused to open the
you know, how
doors,
many
as they were under
matinees and
instructions to let
plays
no
they
one
run.
out during the performance, to prevent people from going down to the orchestra section to get a better seat. 6 minutes after the lamp short-circuited and the fire began, a couple of actors opened this double door at the back of the stage. This introduced a large draft of outside air that the oxygen-hungry fire pulled in. Theaters typically have vents high above the stage, so that in the event of a fire, the vents can open and the air will be pulled away from the audience, up above the stage and out of the theater. The vents of the Iroquois were still nailed or wired shut. Construction workers neglected to remove them. As the fire pulled in air from the outside, multiple witnesses described a giant fireball that began at the edge of the stage, killed everyone still seated in the first few rows, and then turned into dense smoke and toxic fumes as it pushed up into the second and third floor balconies. On the second and third floors,
So it's getting laughable at this point. I know this is a terrible tragedy that happened, and you know it's very sad that it's very sad that it took this tragedy to kind of change rules and laws and, you know, kind of how we do things with building construction and everything. And it's sad that this happened. But at this point, when we're, you know, making these tallies, I mean, this is a perfect storm, and it's getting laughable at this point. You know, how many things are gonna, you know, how many things can go wrong?
It all started because that very first statement, absolutely fireproof.
Absolutely fireproof. Yep. Don't say your ship is unsinkable. Don't say your
people
theater
able
is
to break the
absolutely
doors
fireproof.
open on the north side made it to the fire escape to find them unfinished. This is the view of the theater from the stage, a day after the fire. Your best bet to escape from the orchestra section was out the only open door back on the right. The doors on the left side were locked, and they were all covered with curtains. On the second and third floors, no doors were open. They were confusing puzzles to open, locked, or fake. Many of the openings were arranged like this, a 3-door set, with the leaves on the left hinged together in a bifold arrangement, and the right leaf a more normal door. The middle door has a footbolt that effectively locks the leaves. Some doors in the theater also opened inward, so people rushing up against it blocked it from being opened. Most of the survivors were from the orchestra section. Fumes and flames made escape from the dress circle and the gallery very difficult.
Oh, by the way, that was another check mark.
The fire
doors were
lasted
opening
17
inward.
minutes.
That's definitely
602
one thing you
people
don't want in a
died
commercial building is doors that
out of
open
around
inward.
1,800.
You want to be able to just have people fall out the door.
Probably also the incomplete fire escape.
The next morning, the Indianapolis
Oh, that's true.
Star,
Yeah,
Carl's
that's true. I
hometown
forgot all about
newspaper,
that. The incomplete
reported
fire
this.
escape, yeah, those usually need to be
500 die in
complete,
theater fire
to
at
their
Chicago.
entirety for people actually.
This is the front page of the Star from Thursday, December 31st. This was the performance Carl had planned to attend, but he didn't go. His attempts to get a train ticket back to Indianapolis were eventually successful, and he returned home that same Wednesday night. Carl very narrowly missed becoming a victim and leaving behind a wife and 3-year-old daughter. In an article that Carl wrote many years later, he said, "We felt something must be done." So he worked with his next-door neighbor, an architect named Henry DuPont, and the owner of the hardware store, Mr. Vonnegut, and they came.
Can you imagine being in his shoes? Like, so you were in Chicago, you were trying to get a train ticket, or was it a train ticket or a bus ticket?
I think it was a train ticket.
A train ticket back to your hometown, and so you can't get one. And I guess you're going to keep trying and everything, but you're like, okay, well, being as I'm here, I'm going to go see a show. And then eventually your plans to get that train ticket come through, go through, and you miss out on the show. And then you get home and read about it in the paper the next day. Like, can you imagine the feeling?
It's like secondhand survivor's guilt. He wasn't even there, but he.
Yeah, well, that's what they said. He's got some extreme survivor's guilt going on. But I mean, I can't even imagine the type of feeling that would be. Just escaping it only because he was lucky enough to get a train ticket.
But I mean, it was almost essential to us to get to this point.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know we had no idea where we would be with exit devices and panic hardware.
We just stopped using
and your NFPA laws and codes. I have no idea where we'd be right now. We might be 30 years behind because of all that. I don't know.
Up with this,
Something to think about.
a self-releasing fire exit device. This is a page from a Vonnegut hardware catalog. It fixes 3 problems that the Iroquois theater doors had. First, no special knowledge is required to open them. Just push the bar. Second, if a group of people is pushed up against the door, they will fall against the bar, causing the door to simply open. Third, the door will swing outward, allowing free escape. And this self-releasing fire exit device will do all of this while still allowing the doors to be locked from the outside. There would be no need for a footbolt or any other special lock. This product became not only demanded, but over time required by law as a means to provide life safety in commercial buildings. First sold briefly under the Vonnegut brand, the device eventually was marketed using a name derived from its 3 inventors, Vonnegut, DuPont, and Prinzler. And this became the name as we know it today, Von Duprin. Over the next 100 years, it would be steadily improved, and today, the flagship exit device is this, the 99 series exit device.
So those original exit bars, it looked like they were still using the mortise locks, like the old mortise locks, and then they just attached the bar to it, like the head and the crossbar and then the tailpiece. And that's how exit bars used to look. I mean, we've got a couple back there that are the old crash bar style. It's got that round bar, and I think those have been grandfathered in, like into the codes and everything. So if there's on, and as long as when you go to upgrade, I think you have to upgrade to one of these with the touch pad or the push pad type exit bar. But yeah, it looks like that the original design of it was using the existing mortise lock, or maybe a new mortise lock or something inside in the pocket of that door.
Imagine how hard it was to get this sold at first, because part of the problem at the theater was a new style lock that nobody knew how to use.
Yeah, exactly.
It is regarded by many
I think
as
we're
the
actually
industry's
getting into that.
best. They are very proudly built in Indianapolis, not too far from where the Vonnegut Hardware Company once stood, or from Carl and Nina Prinzler's house on 33rd Street. On January 1st, 1904, 2 days after the fire, the front page of Chicago's largest newspaper, the Tribune, looked like this. It's an editorial cartoon, doing what most editorial cartoons do, calling out for help. Carl's relatives described an immense survivor's guilt that he felt over the tragedy. He was said to plead with fire marshals to require...
So going back, okay, so there's January 1st, and that's 2 days after the disaster, after the fire. And that tells me that it was on January 30th? The fire was on January 30th or 29th or something like that?
December.
December 29th, December 30th, whatever. And so they opened before Thanksgiving, right before Thanksgiving.
Because that first play was on
The first play was on the 3rd or 4th or something, right?
Yeah, the 23rd.
23rd. So they hadn't done a fire drill all for the entire month that they've been open.
Then on that one day where there's
300
so
they had a month.
Too many in.
They had a month to get the people trained on how to work the fire extinguishers, to get the people trained on how to work the fire curtain, to get the people trained on how to work the locks. They had a month to do this. Why was that so difficult? I don't know.
Another thing about that too is like where they weren't letting people out of the upper floors.
That's true. That's another thing. They were instructed not to do so. Like, sorry, we can't open these. Although there's a fire, we can't open them. Like, seriously. I don't know.
That doors open outward. The story Carl presented was one of saving lives, not making money. He made references not only to the struggle to create the right product, but the fight to get the public to adopt it. An entire industry was created from these efforts. And this is what makes the Carl Prinzler story so sweet.
This is probably where what you were saying, to get the fight to get the public to adopt it, especially after, so bringing in that new product right after this disaster where there was already a new product just used on that building. And that, so there, you got to think like, the public and the fire marshals and stuff like that, like fire chiefs and stuff, like, why would we adopt this? Why would we buy this? Why would we use this new product that you say it's going to help save lives when we just used a new product on this building? Like, this building had state-of-the-art stuff. Why do we need your state-of-the-art stuff? You got to think that's going through their head.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And so the struggle with Carl trying to get all that, going, trying to just get any traction at all with that, has got to be, grueling.
A nightmare.
Yeah.
One of the most crucial pillars of the Von Duprin organization and its parent company, Allegiant, is based on acts of aggressive humanitarianism, a passion to prevent tragedies, and a genuine focus on the naive building occupant, the theater goer, who, when panicked and forgetful, can strike the crossbar with their hand. Or, to quote Carl Prinzler himself, if they do not find the crossbar with their hand, the powers that be give them enough equilibrium to strike the crossbar with their body, and the trick is done. Since the first Von Duprin exit device was introduced in 1908, Carl's legacy has resulted in the installation of millions of exit devices to make exiting a building safe, automatic, and mindless. Von Duprin continues Carl's fight to protect building occupants through education, building code enhancement and enforcement, and product innovation. This invention has endured longer than any of our lives and will continue on long after our retirements. The part we play today is a chapter in a spectacular story of fighting to do the right thing in the service of others.
I want somebody to create a simulation of how differently it would have been just by having exit devices on the doors.
Oh my gosh, that would be actually really amazing to watch.
Not even like having a complete fire escape or the vents being built right or any of that.
Just using the exit device on the doors that they had.
Yeah.
Well, that wouldn't even be possible because the doors opened inward.
It said some of them opened inward.
Oh, okay.
So there was
some that opened outward. Yeah. So yeah, it probably, to be quite honest with you, it probably wouldn't have made a huge difference, but it would have made a big difference.
Especially where those people were slamming up against the doors.
Yeah. So when they're slamming up against the door, not knowing how to, manipulate the lock to get out, yeah, that right there would have saved at least 300 people.
That actor at first, where he's like, "Stay there, be calm." I mean, that's great and all, but the minute they hit those doors, you know that broke out in full panic.
Yeah. Yeah. And and also doing that simulation and not knowing what doors open outward, not knowing, it would be interesting to do. I would like to see that, but I mean, I wonder, if this was to happen today, you could have easily done a simulation like that.
Yeah.
And did a computer simulation and did that, but yeah, there was no such thing back then. But yeah, so anyway, that's how we got to where we are today with exit devices. Right now, there's NFPA codes and NFPA laws that state, commercial buildings have to have this with certain occupancy types. And I'm not going to get into the types of occupancy that requires this. Some places require this, some places just require, that you can get away with a lever set and a deadbolt or something like that. But it all boils down to how many people are going to be in that building, what kind of use the building is, and stuff like that. So like, hospitals, I think schools, special needs type places like nursing homes and stuff like that, or care facilities have to, it's kind of a requirement. You don't get away with anything but an exit device.
It really matters where the door is.
Yeah. So anyway, the Von Duprin 99, that's kind of Von Duprin's, they said that's their flagship model is the 99. And we know the 99 is really strong. It's really durable. And it's not
bulky. It doesn't look bad.
No. It's not bulky.
Design.
It's just strong.
Yeah.
And that's actually what we're going to get into next week, is just kind of showing off how strong it is. So what we're going to do is a test, and it's a unbiased test. We want to see how strong the Von Duprin 99 is, and how strong exit bars in general are. And so there's a video, and so what we're going to do, I'm going to put a link down to this video in the description. I'm going to put a link to the video that we're going to talk about here in just a second in the description. And so the video we just watched was the History of Von Duprin. The video that we're getting ready to talk about is, I think it's called The Ultimate Test. And we actually play it on the screen here, just we play it all day here at the shop. It just plays on a loop with a whole bunch of other stuff. So you actually might have seen it just now playing. But what they actually do in the Ultimate Test, and this was a video like made back in the 80s. You can really tell it's an 80s video. And it's so nostalgic. It's so fantastic to watch. But
just the intro alone.
Yeah, just the intro alone. They had the whole Star Wars theme going on. So it was amazing just to watch that, and just that nostalgic look to it. But anyway, so what they do is, it's called the Ultimate Test. And they take exit bars, and they're mounted to a piece of wood, and they lay them, on the ground, and then they run over these exit bars just like this. They run over them with a fire truck. So when I saw this video on YouTube, I just found it. I don't even know how I found it anymore. But when I saw it, I immediately emailed my Allegiant rep and say, hey, I want to redo this video. I want to recreate this test and see if the Von Duprin 99 is as strong as it was, can withstand a modern fire truck, because that, remember, they were dealing with fire trucks that were from the 80s. They were lighter. Now fire trucks are a lot heavier. They're about almost 20,000 pounds heavier than they were back then. And we're actually going to go to my fire department. We're going to go to Ohio River Road Volunteer Fire Department, just a couple miles away from our shop. And we're going to lay out our exit bars on the ground, and we're going to run over them with a fire truck. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be next week, and we're going to do that. But again, I will link the video that we just watched in the description, and I'm also going to link the ultimate test video, the one we just talked about, in the description as well. Go watch those before you watch next week, and you'll really have an appreciation for the video itself, and you'll also get an appreciation just for panic hardware in general, and seeing, you know, what it was like and what had to happen just to save a few lives here and there with, you know, fires and stuff like that and building construction. So it's actually really amazing to watch.
This simple change could keep you from burning to death.
Yep, exactly. So, and all about that fight that he had to get people to adopt it. You know,
now it's regulated.
Yeah, now there's regulation, and there's codes, there's building codes behind that. Anyway, that's what we're going to be doing next week, is running over exit bars with fire trucks. So please watch that video. Watch the video coming up next week. Other than that, we'll see you, and go like us on all the social medias at AKL Solutions, and give this video a like, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you next week.